Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children over the age of 18, welcome back. I'm Tez, that's Travis, and we are your favorite LOs. In today's edition of Terminology Tuesday, we're going to talk about two terms that kind of get you, used interchangeably. One is the title, and the other is the deed. So go ahead, grab that pen and a piece of paper and your favorite beverage, and we'll be right back to break down the difference between the two. See you in a second. All right, folks, welcome back. And as promised, we're going to break down two terms that get interchanged often when we're talking about the mortgage process, and that's the title and the deed. So, Travis, why don't you go ahead and start us off? Kind of tell the folks what is title so that they know at least what that portion of this purchase process is in that regards.
I look at title as a concept. Title is essentially your tangible ownership of a property. So if Tez, you and I both owned a property together, we would both appear on title. We would both have a certain set of rights when it comes to that home. The most important, which is the right of possession, a right of control, which basically means like you and I both possess that home. You and I can both control how that property is used as long as we're abiding by the law. We also have a right to exclusion where we can limit who's allowed to be there, as well as the right to disposition where it gives me the opportunity or you the opportunity to sell that property. And last but not least, it's a right of enjoyment, which basically means we can use that property how we see fit as long as we're not, again, breaking any laws. Funny thing about that is that when you close on your mortgage, you're going to sign a document that's basically going to state all of the things you won't do on your property. Those would supersede your right that you have on title. So when we're discussing title, a lot of times people get that confused as, like it's this actual physical piece of paper. And I think a lot of times where people run into that misconception is in most states, we call, our ownership paperwork for our vehicles as the title of the vehicle. So most oftentimes we've known title as a physical piece of paper. In mortgage terms and real estate terms, most often there's no physical piece of paper that is the title to the home. It's just the ownership rights that you may or may not have. One quick hitter on title is you can hold title without being on the mortgage. So husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, couples of all different types, even just family members can hold title, on a property that they're not on the mortgage for. One thing that I always want to let people know about that is that the title essentially represents your legal ownership in the property. Okay, so like I have had people that have come to me in a lot of times divorce situations or other types of split ups. I've had family issues, like where mom is no longer talking to daughter, daughter is on the title. Keep in mind that like going to someone and saying like, well, I pay the mortgage doesn't necessarily mean that you didn't agree to have someone on title there at the very beginning. That's about the rundown that I would have for title. Says anything that I missed on that before you hop into like actual physical deed?
The only thing I would add in regards to title is, ladies and gentlemen, like because he did bring up, other people could be on title without being on the mortgage. So you really want to know how your state treats title. So like for here in North Carolina, for anybody who's married, they have to legally have that married person on title with them. They have ownership interest in the property, even though they're not on the mortgage itself. So, it's really tricky. Well, not tricky for those folks that are in states like that where they're in the process of getting a divorce, but they want to, you know, um, buy a home, but or they're separated from their spouse. And I'm saying, when we ask that question, it's like, hey, well, just so you know, that other person, because of the state we live in, has an ownership interest in that property because you two are married. So just check what it is per your state, as far as like, if you are married and you're buying a house, how title needs to be held amongst that. But yeah, that's the only thing I would really add to title. Now I'll jump into the last one, and this is the quick one, ladies and gentlemen. And that's the actual deed to the house. And the deed is nothing, it's literally what Travis said as the title, but in physical document form, proving the ownership of the actual property in question. And since it is tangible, the deed is what's oftentimes transferred from seller, aka the grantor, to the buyer, aka the grantee, in the actual closing process. So when you go to closing, that actual physical piece of paper conveying ownership will be given to you at the closing table. So then that way you actually have the physical piece of paper, which is the deed, right? So it's basically title in physical form, right? It's no other way rundown. The only things that you might hear with deeds, it's like there are a couple of different types of deeds, and typically with the actual property itself, you're getting like the general warranty deed. That might be another AKA for the actual deed in and of itself. You might hear something called a special warranty deed. That's typically in like commercial real estate. And then oftentimes you'll hear things called like a quick claim deed. And that's just simply to add like another ownership or take ownership of someone off of a currently existing deed that's filed like separately and like with the county and things of that nature. So those are a few other deeds, but the actual physical deed to the property in question is going to be that actual piece of paper in that regards. So, I mean, I don't know, Trav, did I miss anything in regards to the deed that you want to add to the mix?
No, man, I thought you knocked that out of the park. Very, very interchangeable items that we talked about today. Most important piece of it is that they both represent the ownership, right? It's just two different pieces of it. Uh, Great job knocking out the deed. If you have questions about your standing on title or anything that has to do with title, um, reach out to your trusted mortgage advisors. Hopefully, Tez and I will get you in touch with someone who can answer your question. Title is going to be a little bit different in every state. Keep in mind that it doesn't have to be a community property state for certain rules to apply when it comes to the deed and title of the property, right? Community property states are one of those things that they're kind of a one-off nowadays. When a long time ago they were the standard. So if you have any questions about how you hold deed or title, please just give us a shout.
Awesome. So I think that'll wrap up this episode of Terminology Tuesday, ladies. As always, if you found this information to be helpful, please go ahead, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, as well as the bell notification so you're always up to date whenever we upload new content. But with that said, I'm Tez, and that's Travis, and we are your favorite LOs. Till next time, folks. See ya.